Wow, everybody, welcome, 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 welcome to Does It Resonate With You? We're back again. We are live on YouTube land and on Facebook, at least for the time being. We use StreamYard to stream, and I think I heard something about Facebook not allowing streaming to groups or something in April. So we'll see how that goes. But you'll always be able to find us on YouTube. And if you wouldn't mind, if you're already here and thinking to listen, could you reach down and hit the subscribe button, because we're really close. We're closing in on 100 now. We hit 75. So we just need 25 more to get to 100. And I feel like once we get to 100, then we've made it, right? Anyway, how fortunate we are to have another person with us to talk about astrology. You know, we have that as a topic on the regular, if that's how you want to say it. Um, because John and I both enjoy it and are fascinated by it. So just please help us welcome Deborah Rahalski, and she is a good pal from. Actually, you might have heard me talk about her because of the when I did a plug for the Daruma event.
Yeah. I remember that.
And then here's the little Daruma still in the works. He doesn't have his new eye yet, but he will.
He will.
He will.
He's working on it.
So yeah, I mean, it was a long-term thing, so it wasn't something that was going to happen quickly. Anyway, hi John, good to see you again this week.
You too.
And I'm excited. Are you?
Yes.
We actually, now that I mention it, before I forget to, so we don't forget at the end, next week we have Melanie Raphael, who does something really unique and interesting. She does intuitive website design. And so we're going to talk tech and we're going to talk, that kind of thing. Maybe even dip our toes into a little bit of the AI conversation.
Excellent.
And AI images and what have you. We all know where Angie stands on that. If you actually look at my page, at least where I stand on AI images.
Right.
I like them.
Yep.
Except for of myself. I don't do that. But anyway, so Deb, this is a fascinating topic. Prescriptive versus predictive astrology. And I know the difference. And we explained the difference to John, or John knew the difference. One or the other, or both.
Yeah, you posted Deborah's comment, and I'm like,
yeah. So I gave you the comment. And the truth is, both John and I follow prescriptive astrology. That's how we apply astrology, is in a prescriptive manner rather than a predictive manner. So. Let's just jump before we let John get into all the questions he has, which I'm sure he has a list.
I do.
And he comes up with the best questions. So before we do that, why don't you tell us, Deb, a little bit about yourself, and just real quick in a nutshell what you mean by by prescriptive versus predictive astrology. I know you've been studying astrology and applying it for a very long time. So
yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I was really excited when Angie posted the opportunity to participate in the podcast. I've listened in and really enjoyed it. I identify myself as a cosmic adventurer who is dedicated to being a compassionate catalyst for change. And over the years, that's, kind of been a lot of different things, whether it was working with special ed students in my 20 plus year career in special education in my local school district. Before that, in television journalism, as a mom raising two amazing young women. But I think the cosmic adventurer part of it came from the fact that my mom is Japanese, my dad's American. And I was born in Japan when my dad was serving post-Korean War. That's how we met my mom. She was worked on the base because she spoke good English. They met and married, and I was born there. Came back to the States. My dad loved Asia. He decided he wanted to go back. So when I was 10, we moved and we lived all over Southeast Asia, Hong Kong, the Philippines, Korea. I got exposed to a lot of different cultures.
Wow.
I also got exposed to the other side of my culture because my mother wanted to fit into the US. So she didn't raise us to speak Japanese. We learned a little bit about Japanese food, but I didn't understand or find any of the Asian traditions until we moved overseas,
Mm.
and discovering things like our gym teacher used to do yoga classes before yoga was even a thing, after school. And I'm like, this sounds cool. I'll do this, and then she offered meditation and I started meditating. And this is like in my, early teens, which is also around the same time that I discovered astrology. I'd always been interested in astronomy. I was that little girl that wanted a telescope and a map of the moon instead of the Barbie dream house, when the Barbie
Wow.
dream house was the thing, and all the girls in my neighborhood wanted that, and all my female cousins wanted that. One of my male cousins too. So I wanted a map of the moon, and I was fascinated by the moon and studying astronomy to the best that I could. I begin to find information, particularly when I was in Hong Kong, that at one point in time, astrology and astronomy were one science.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the concept, this leads into the predictive versus prescriptive astrology. But, when people talk about, how do you know this? Well, what's the data? The data for astrology dates back tens of thousands of years. In fact, many of modern day astronomical discoveries are based on data that was what the data of data from ancient astrologers / astronomers, were predicting, we're seeing. And I mean, when I first discovered astrology, I was like, this is just cool. That was like, in the 70s, it's like the sun sign thing. What's his sun sign? What's that cute boy's sun sign? And how can I figure out how that's going to work? That kind of stuff. But the interesting thing was, when I started working with astrology, it wasn't like studying, it was like remembering. This is like, and I now understand that I have had many past lives where it's like, this is one of the skill sets that I was coming into.
Okay.
So I didn't have to memorize the signs, the houses. So it was like, okay, I've got this. I can go to this level. I did a side trip for a while into a lot of Asian astrology with the different solar cycle. They have an annual cycle of the 12 signs, which corresponds to the Jupiter cycle, which is interesting. We're right now in a year of the dragon. A little bit of feng shui. Feng shui got a little complicated for me, but over time, I just kind of found, it was just like, oh, this book is interesting. This book, Vedic astrology, is fascinating. It was a rabbit hole I didn't feel drawn to. So there are many different ways of basically of understanding this. And my way of understanding it, dealing with the Asian mysticism, which is a different interpretation of the divine than from the somewhat traditional Lutheran church that I was raised in, was the idea of like, one day I just sort of had this revelation of like, one of my friends says, I don't understand how you can go to church and believe in astrology. And I looked at her and I said, do you not believe that God created the heavens and the earth, that he put was he back then. I now refer to it as they, as the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, they, or, whatever, divine, masculine, feminine. Do you not believe that is all by some design, that those planets move in this way and these patterns are created? That's all like part of what you call God's plan. And she was just like, never said anything. She was like, okay, I'm not talking to her anymore. I mean,
Well, sure.
You don't fit in a box.
That's
and
right.
I think I was like 17. That was around the time I was a junior, senior in high school. And this was a girl who was like, really like, she would like literally walk around with the Bible and literally hit people on the head with it to get you to know Jesus. So it's like, stop doing that. Crazy
Something.
girl. Yeah.
I think that's
She would have hit me on the head once.
right.
And then she might very well have avoided ever hitting someone on the head again. But I digress.
Yeah, she eventually we're kind of like, that's really not the best way to get people to come to Jesus or whatever. But she eventually
sick, right?
got that.
Probably counterproductive. But anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, I digress.
I could just imagine. I could just literally, actually, in my mind's eye, see Jesus just going like this.
Right.
Well, of course.
Please.
Yes, of course.
So over the years, in finding, and it's all about you talking about, you follow astrologers who are predictive astrology. So, I began to follow certain things, and it, when you're young and you're looking at it, it's like, oh, this is a big aspect. This could be bad. This is Saturn, blah, blah, blah. It's this, and I'm like, and I always had an issue with like the approach to Saturn, because Saturn just visually, has been my favorite planet from childhood. Back when Saturn was the only one that had rings. And Saturn's rings, the other planets have rings, but Saturn's rings are just undeniably beautiful. The photographs that come back from space, they're also very unique and unusual amongst the other rings. So, there were just different things. And this was a path of me, along with other aspects of my spirituality. What forms of meditation work? Zen did not work. I cannot sit on my butt for that long. Walking meditation works. Tai Chi works for me. It's that thing. It was finding these little puzzle pieces, and how when you get a puzzle piece and you feel like this is going to fit right here and it just doesn't, because it belongs over here, but you can't put that puzzle piece over here to get the rest of it. So over time, I've come to find, by reading certain, which literature I read with, which teachers I studied with, I began to find this way of understanding that how this fits into the concept that everything in the universe is energy. And energy is, by its nature, completely neutral. It's neither good nor bad.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It can be deconstructive or constructive, but deconstruction, while it can be chaotic, is not always bad. It's tough, it's challenging, but it's not bad. So understanding then that it's not that, this is happening because Saturn is this in your chart. What's happening in your life is a reflection of your energetic response to the energy that's around you.
So it's a little more collaborative, right? It's like you
very
working,
co-creative.
you being in the energy. It's like life happens with you, not to you. Is that okay? Cool.
And that's the different perspective of predictive versus prescriptive astrology.
Okay.
Predictive astrology is, this is happening to us.
Oh, wow. That's great. Differentiation.
It's
okay.
like, this
I get
is
it.
happening. This is this. You're this sun sign. One of the astrologers I follow, her name is Pam Gregory. She's British. She's amazing. She says, I don't do sun signs. She says, she understands sun sign energy, your birth charts, all that. She says, your birth chart is basically a blueprint of the energy you've come in with. What you do with it is your choice. The way I look at birth charts is, the minute you're born, every energy is moving. Okay. The moon makes an entire revolution all the way around your chart, activates every energy point in your birth chart within 28 to 29 days. This is why some babies cry, some babies sleep, some babies eat a lot, some babies laugh a lot, some babies poop a lot. They go through the whole life experience and go, oh boy, this is what I signed up for, right?
Right.
So everything is moving, and everything is very dynamic. And it's all about potential. So it's a little bit like the weather. Some people say, oh, is it as accurate as the weather or not? Weather prediction now has become extremely accurate within a 24-hour to 48-hour window.
Really? Who do you listen to?
Actually, there's one exception.
Quite a few people.
There's one exception to that, and that's the Midwest. We've got this goofy little lake in the middle here, where that causes things. So both Angie and I live near Great Lake, Michigan, and we get some really weird bait and switch weather predictions. So
yeah, we really do.
Yep,
we really do.
Well,
so when I say they don't get it right, I'm not kidding.
My home in upstate New York is about 30 to 40 miles south of Lake Ontario.
Okay, so you get some of that.
To our west, we've got Erie. So I definitely understand that. But the way our weather predictors back home in New York, they want all these words from me. They're like, okay, this is lake effect snow. The probability, the greatest band of probability where it's going to fall is here, but it could be here, it could be here. All about the wind. It could shift, it could move even within the hour. And they're like, stay tuned, stay updated. It's that kind of thing.
So anyway, just real quick on that, the prescriptive versus sorry, what was the other one? Prescriptive versus
predictive.
Predictive, yes. So one of my questions was specifically, what role does free will play in kind of that whole system? And I think you're talking directly to that question, right? Because life is not happening to you, it's happening with you, or you're participating. That is the free will part of it.
Absolutely. And And it was when I discovered astrologers who very, very, very much believed in that
Mm-hmm.
concept and spoke to that, that I found the path that allowed me to sort of move forward. Now, initially, the way I got into actually doing astrology more professionally was just did it for myself.
Yep.
I
We
did
all
it, and
start
then when I
there.
had a family, when I had family, I did it for my daughters. I did it some for some of my brother. I have two younger brothers. One of my brothers used to consult me on a regular basis. The other brother did it once and never again. And I just asked him. I said, "I'm just curious," and he said, "You were so accurate, it scared the shit out of me."
Oh, wow. That's cool.
I
I
was
mean,
like,
what a nice
I was like,
testimony, though,
yeah,
right?
I don't, yeah, and it wasn't bad
You put
stuff
that on
either.
your
He was just
website.
like, ooh, he's like, I don't want to know, I don't want to know. It's like, okay,
How interesting.
and that's fine, which is part of free will, right?
Yep.
He's also very intuitive, so he kind of, navigates his life in a way that's more similar to mine, anyway.
Interesting.
But so for me, the whole concept of free will is this. And this is a little bit off astrology, but I had this moment when I was working with my guides, and they said, you can come in with a soul contract and you have free will, and people have free will to absolutely walk away from that contract. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to fulfill it. No. And
Mhm.
and that's going to change the perspective of what happens in their life and their experience, but they have the right to do that and to
Uh-huh.
go through life that way, not fulfilling that contract, okay, not experiencing the experience of that contract, choosing a different path, and then leave and go, oh right, I was supposed to do that. It's like, and I'm like, is it as simple as like walking into a room, you forget what you were going to do, walk back out and go, oh right, I was going to go back and do that. Hey,
Great.
and I
So,
was like, oh, so the soul contract, predictive astrology, kind of looks at a chart as saying, this is who you are,
mhm,
this is what will happen,
mhm.
and
Get used to
these
it,
are
right?
your choices, and these are your choices in there.
Mhm,
Okay. Prescriptive astrology says, this is the energy you came in with. This is your starting point. But you don't stay your sun sign for your whole life. On a core level, yes. It's kind of like you have certain core DNA. I'm not going to suddenly not be Japanese when I turn 47 or when
mhm.
I turn 70, right? But your sunshine, when you use progressed astrology, where every day after you're born is the equivalent of a year. So if you want to know what someone's life, um, what the life path looks like at the age of 20, you count forward 20 days in an ephemeris. You look at where's the sun, where's the moon, and you can look at that chart and say, this is how this energy they came in with at birth is going to evolve in
Hmm.
20 years.
It's like
So
it's like
nobody's,
fractal.
yes, exactly like fractal. So
Cool.
no one stays one particular sun sign.
Yep.
And so the evolution of that is how and where it moves. And so that's going to move through different areas of your chart. It's going to move from one house into another house. As it moves forward, the sun is going to contact different energy points. I've done charts where people's sun, the progress sun, goes bam, 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 hits all these target points. And I'm like, boy, you had a lot of stuff going on in your early life. And it's not always trauma. A
Mhm.
lot of times like, oh my gosh, this happened and then this happened and it
Right.
was this. And so what you're looking at is potential.
Mhm.
Like I was saying, like a weather forecast, there's a potential. Okay. There's
Yep.
the potential for rain. If you are planning an outdoor event, I'll use an example experience I had last year. Last year I went to a meditation retreat I go to every year. It
Mhm.
was in the San Bernardino Mountains. It was in August, and if you remember, there was that once in a century hurricane / turned into tropical storm that came up the California coast and
Okay.
across through LA. We were right in that line of path.
Oh,
Now,
man.
the hurricane was not supposed to, or the tropical storm was not supposed to arrive until the day after the retreat, but the storm started moving faster. And the people facilitating the event said, we think we're going to go for it. We have plenty of time. If we have to evacuate, we'll evacuate. We all showed up there. We're like, okay, the storm is moving faster. People are at it. It was just an interesting experience. We did end up leaving a day early.
Hmm.
And then I ended up going to, finding a place to stay and shelter in place. I had a whole second part of that trip planned. And my decision, I could have left and driven all the way back to Portland. I had driven down there, driven all the way back to Portland. But I'm like, no, I have these national parks I want to go to. I'm going to
Right.
wait this out. I'm going to wait this out. I made a choice. Other people, went in different directions. I made a choice. I also made sure I got a friend of mine who was there at the retreat for the first time safely to a hotel at an airport so she could get home. And I waited it out. And as a result, when I did go to the national parks, which were at this point empty because they had shut, the ones in the Sierra Mountains had shut down. The campgrounds were wide open. I had my choice of any campsite, and I got to camp at some amazing places. Okay.
Cool.
Now, I made certain choices that made my experience of the devastating storm, which actually did not turn out to be as devastating in LA as some of the recent rains. I made certain choices of how I was going to respond to this. So this is that free will of that. I don't have any direct control over the storm, when it's going to hit or how it's going to hit. Yeah, to some extent, collective consciousness. There's all this thing about people praying hurricanes away, wildfires away. Great. You pray it away from you and it goes over here. What about those people who are praying away for it?
And the other community says,
oh
thanks
my
a
God,
lot.
I'll just take the path. I'll take the path of least resistance, go this way, whatever.
Right. The
So
least prayerful.
You right, and interestingly enough, the retreat was for the Course in Miracles. I've been a Course in Miracles student for
really? Oh man, we do got to talk. Yep, I read Marianne Williamson every morning.
Yes. My mom discovered Marianne Williamson, and then she discovered a study group, which is how I discovered this group that's based in LA that does this retreat. Woman's name is Beverly Hutchinson McNeff, and she does a live stream. She's been doing this live stream for years, so long ago that originally, if you wanted to get the recording, it came to you on cassette tapes.
Oh wow!
Remember those?
Okay, that's
and then on CDs.
That's OG.
and now it's live stream like
right.
this.
Right.
But
wow,
this
man,
is all
amazing.
about fear versus love. Now, I'm not going to badmouth and box all of predictive astrology into the fear base, but it's a lot easier to read predictive astrology and go down the rabbit hole of, oh my God, this is going to happen.
Right.
Okay.
So real quick, just let me interrupt. We get that all the time in tarot. So I do tarot, and you run into people that are like, I just got a horrible reading from a tarot reader that says this and this and this is going to happen. And you kind of have to talk them off the ledge and say, let's actually look and see what that really means. A bad card is kind of a heads up, right? As opposed to a prediction of doom. And what we really talk about is like, what's your response? How are you going to participate in that? So
the
I think
three of
almost
air
the same
does
thing.
not. The three of air does not always mean a heart attack. It can. Angie and I have a very, very, very good mentor that we follow, for whom, when it came up in connection to someone in his family, he realized it did mean an imminent heart attack, and he made certain changes in his plans, but it does not always mean a heart attack, right? One of my favorite cards in tarot is the Tower card. People are like, wait, what? And I go, no, I love a good storm. First of all, I love lightning.
That's funny.
And I'm like, not that I want to be on the tower, but
right.
Big
changes, bring it on, right?
It's like that moment of the aha moment, and if that shows up, or there are tower moments in astrology. 2024 is a year of tower moments on a global level, on an individual level. It's the human collective.
Yeah.
And so everybody in astrology right now, going into 2020, astrologers were all predicting a lot, right? No one knew exactly what was going to happen.
Yeah, but the buzz was there, wasn't it?
But everybody saw, this is big, this is huge. No, we're talking global impact. People are like, oh my God, war, it's going to be this. I see some astrologers talked about food shortages, right? Well, it wasn't famine, but there was definitely food shortage. I remember standing in my grocery store and going, why is there no elbow macaroni on the shelf? There's linguine, there's fettuccine. And my brain could not, I could understand if we had, if there was a frost in California and there was a dearth of citrus fruit, but I did, just mind-boggling things. Right?
You know what it was over here was yeast. We had trouble. Well, actually, we had just bought like a big 2-pound bag of yeast, And
Good for
then we
you.
found out, oh, there's no more yeast left. Well, there you go. But that was
Everybody-
kind
That's
of
because
weird.
everybody was home baking bread.
I know,
Everybody was
I know.
home.
It was not
Everybody
really
was
that hard to
home.
figure out.
It wasn't hard to
There
figure
was
out.
that, and there
Right.
was
But it was
there
weird.
was the fact that people who were driving things from place to place were not allowed to be out on the roads.
Right. It
So
was like kind of a
it's,
duh moment, but
you know, I mean, I'm going to be the one that needs to, like bring some common sense into the conversation. Yes, it can be predictive, and yes, they predicted all these struggles, and yes, they were actually correct. But the truth of the matter is, if you read the energy, what happened was the appropriate response to a pandemic.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Except for the
Absolutely.
toilet paper
So-
thing. Now, the toilet paper thing was a little ridiculous because I don't really know why people thought they were going to run out of damn toilet paper. How much toilet paper do you use in a day?
Well, it just so happened that the week before, even though I'm like, we don't really need toilet paper, but I'm going to be really busy next week. And my husband was out of town. I said, I'm just going to buy the big pack now. I think I had a coupon for it or whatever. I don't really need it, but it wasn't like I had 2 of them. So when I did go to the grocery store the first time and I'm like, there's no meat anywhere. It's like, there's no, I am predominantly vegetarian, but my husband had been traveling and he was coming back and I'm like, he'd been gone for a week. There was no meat in the house. Oh, I should buy some meat for him. And all I could find, there were 2 roasting chickens left. And there was this one woman and she looked at me and I looked at her and I said, I'll take one, you take the other. She goes, okay. I go, run for it. It's like, I actually wrote a short story called The Last Chicken on Earth.
oh, that's great.
based
I love that
on my experience.
title.
But yes, so yeah, shut down, whatever. So the predictive, it's not that predictive is necessarily, it's not that it has to be one or the other. When I think about the difference between predictive and prescriptive astrology, I try to phrase my language, my terminology when I'm talking, when I'm writing my astrology pieces that I post on my business's Facebook page. I try to phrase it in ways that, number one, it's understandable and accessible to people who don't know what a square means or what a conjunction is or Jupiter, Uranus. I try to phrase
lots
it
of people
so they
don't.
can read it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And I'm trying to phrase it in a way
the
that
hardest
people
thing
can
for me is the
understand it.
vocabulary.
Right. It's if people are, when I do a reading, I'm like, how much background do you have in astrology? And if people are like, oh yeah, I know this and this, I'm like, okay, I know I can say, okay, you have a lot going on in your 8th house, and they'll understand what that means.
Right.
Yeah,
When I'm
but
working
most
with someone,
people don't.
right. But if they do, but if they don't, I'll say you have a lot going on in a particular area of your chart. It's the 8th house, and the 8th house is connected to this. Okay.
Mhm.
No planet, sign, house, angle, aspect means one thing. You can't say Jupiter only means this. The
Right.
sun
Same in
in
tarot.
Cancer doesn't only mean this. It's right. There's layers and layers and layers, and it's the combinations. And so everything is so very unique. So when you look at it, it's like the potential for certain things to happen when this pattern exists and it's interacting with this particular energy on your birth chart. The potential for something to happen is probably much greater than not. Okay. And the potential for that to be expansive or for it to be a tower moment, an aha, like, an awakening kind of moment, or for it to be retrospective. If it's happening in energies, in patterns and things that are connected to a lot of physical areas, I'll ask someone, how's your health? Have you been dealing with any health challenges? I don't do medical astrology.
Right.
But if it's showing up in those areas or connected to that, they'll be like, yeah, well, I have been kind of dealing with this and this. I'm like, this is something to pay attention to. These are,
I'm gonna segue here a minute. I have a couple questions related to how you work with clients. So here's an example. Let's say you're doing a reading and you wanna do more of a prescriptive focus. What techniques, tools, how do you help clients kind of become like active creators in their journey? What's that conversation sound like?
This is where a lot of the intuitive pieces of it come. When I'm working on somebody's chart, when I work up somebody's chart beforehand and sit down with laying out the energies and looking at what's the baseline that we've come in with. I also do, at a minimum, I do for myself the progression of the sun from when
Okay.
they were born up to this point. So I have a basic understanding of like, here are some key points. And I might ask them, there's a really significant energy that happened when you were 10. What was going on in this year around that time? And they'll be like, oh, okay, this is the first time I meet with somebody, right?
Right.
So I get some background and they're like, oh, oh my gosh, I never really thought about that. That's so similar to what I'm dealing with right now. There'll be this light bulb, not always, but there'll be a light bulb. So that gives me some of that background energy. And then what I look at is, okay, what are the potentials? Where are there energies that are a bit more challenging, where there's a bit more tension? Where are there energies where there are harmonics, trines and things that are flowing together? Where is there, for example, the yod, where something like a boom, this is coming here, and this is. Which of these aspects are long-term? This is evolving over the next 3 to 6 months, maybe 3 years, like
That's
Pluto going into
helpful.
Aquarius.
Yeah, super helpful.
Right? Or what is happening in the immediate? Okay. That's all before I sit down and do that. And I have a whole system for how I work with that. I also bring in a little bit of numerology because I did an angel numerology course working with the numbers where I have my interpretation of 0 through 9. And I pay attention to if certain numbers show up all the time, like if there's a lot of 5s going on, 5 is a number of change, right? And so that will sometimes also cue me to pay it because a chart of the birth chart alone is a rabbit hole. You add on the current transits, that's another rabbit hole. You can get completely. And I used to
do a 4-hour reading there.
And when I first did astrology, the way I moved from personal astrology for just me and my family, I had a friend who opened a metaphysical bookstore. She had a bunch of us helping out at the store. And she said, all right, she teaches, most of us are Reiki Master, but she teaches Reiki. She's been the Reiki Master the longest. She's going to do Reiki. She does the card reading. She does massage. She does crystal work. Deb, you're the only person who knows anything about astrologer. You're going to be the store's astrologer.
Sweet.
So suddenly I was doing charts for people, right?
That's awesome. Like
putting all this work
bestowed upon you.
and sitting down to do a reading with someone. And I'm like, okay, what kind of questions do you have? And some people like, well, just tell me what's there. And I'll start and they'll sort of pick up on it, and then other people like, yeah, I'm really worried about that. And I would start talking and saying this and this and this. And then go, why am I saying that? And look down. Oh, because Mercury is conjunct the sun. Or then I'd go on to say, oh, because Mars is transiting through their 7th house. I was getting the information and going, where's this coming from?
Yeah.
And then now I've done the work on their chart. I'm already connected to the energy.
Right.
I've already opened up with guides and angels. I always worked with angels in my own work. And the chart was just a validation. But I used to be so concerned that I would forget something, that I would leave something out. And when my friend closed the shop and moved, I kept a couple of private clients that I kept working with. But then at that time, my daughters were a bit older, so I went back to working full time, and I just didn't have the time to continue it professionally for full time. Where I've gone back into putting it into my professional life now is kind of like I resisted it for a while. I'm like, this is such a rabbit hole. This gets so complicated. I just spent 3 hours earlier today laying out my post for March because March is so complex in terms of all the energies that are happening. I'm like, how am I going to present this in a way that people are not just going to be like, I'm going to go build a bunker and stay. No, it's not that bad.
Right.
Really.
Yep.
But you don't, and this is again, prescriptive.
Right.
People, we have big energy coming. Okay. I don't think you need to be intuitive or psychic to feel it. Everybody is feeling it.
Yep.
You're seeing it in the reactions and the responses. I don't watch a lot of news anymore, which is
odd that's a good thing, but you can still feel it though, even in the headlines.
Yeah. In the collective, in everything, and just in the way things are, right? And for me, my thing is when I go out in the world and I'm at the grocery store and I try to engage with people, if they have a name tag, I'll be like, Cindy, how's your day going? And they look at me for a second, they realize I have a name. Oh, it's okay. And I go, well, that sounds like it's not as okay as you want it to be. So I hope you have a better day,
That's cool.
going forward.
That's
or something,
cool.
Just little moments of joy and kindness. But when I look at something this big and I look at it, that it's presenting this energy of saying, people, we are dealing with, for example, the outer planets, all of the outer planets changing sign within a 2-year period at the same time has not happened for 500 years.
Mm.
And when it happened 500 years ago, in a period of great revolution and change and all sorts of social structures, there were some negative things that came out of that, negative control systems that came out of it. There were some positive things that came out of
Sure.
it in terms of scientific advances,
Yeah.
very similar to what we're dealing with now,
Yeah,
but in a
interesting.
different layout of signs, a different layout of energies. And if you take something like that and lay Pluto and Aquarius on top of that, right? Pluto only has a little bit of time left to revisit the last degrees of Capricorn. It's September through October. And then it'll be forward in Aquarius for the next 20 years.
Okay.
We are talking about moving into another another stage, another 20-year cycle.
Cool.
With Neptune changing signs and Uranus changing signs also in the next couple of years, and then Saturn following. So you've got these 4 outer planets, and those are slow moving energies, slow moving cycles.
Right.
It's not like Mercury going around and back and forth, or Mars, which takes 2 years. This is a slow moving energy of something that's slowly evolving. And as they move backwards and forwards with that, retrograde thing.
Right.
What we're finding is take a couple steps forward, pushing back, couple steps forward. We've had this year from the end of January when Uranus finally went direct, this almost 2.5 month period of all of the planets moving
Going
forward.
direct. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And people are like, I feel all this energy pushing me forward, but I just can't figure out what I've got all this ideas and this, and where do I focus? And it's this big perspective of like, there's so much out there. So what it's all about, I've come to decide, in my interpretation, is the potential, opening up to the potential of how quickly and easily we can shift our own personal timeline.
That's good.
Literally in a moment of making a decision of like, I'm going to do this instead of this.
Yep.
I'm going to forgive this debt, or let this go, leave this behind, do this instead of this on my website.
Yep.
Whatever, is shifting timelines. And that as everybody is shifting timelines and as everybody is making decisions, that collectively shifts the whole human experiment timeline, which that's what it is. The human experiment is shifting that timeline as well.
Cool.
So
I want to, we have to wrap up in a minute. So I want to get to one more question, if we could. If you have one, do you have a favorite client story? There's always, every practitioner has something that's happened and we're like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. If you have one, that's great. Otherwise, maybe we can continue on with the current thought.
I do actually. And it happened a number of years ago, but it's interesting you mention it because I just recently heard from this person.
Cool.
There actually was somebody that was, a mutual friend that used to come into my friend's store as well. And they had just reached out to me. And it's funny because they said, you remember how you talked about this and this? And I was like, yeah. And they were really focused on, they had this dream. They wanted to move someplace where they could buy land and live out, in sort of away from people,
Sure.
but not totally remote. And I said, well, I'll tell you that what I'm seeing in terms of this is that this is not something that looks imminent. You can make it happen. You can buy something closer here, whatever. But what I'm seeing is the potential, the financial freedom, all of the things that are open. There are some things you have to clear out of the way. And that it's we're talking forward, probably like 10 years. When you tell somebody that this dream that they want is 10 years away, it seems like forever, right? She's really feeding, but then a whole bunch of stuff happened in her family. She's got, oh my God. She came because she was thinking about buying a particular piece of property in the area, even though this wasn't where she wanted to live. She wanted to move someplace where the climate had less snow. I don't blame her.
I can relate.
And so, right, if you're going to live on the land, right? And she said, I felt so, but then all this stuff happened. Oh my God, I'm so glad that at least I took the advice not to buy. I didn't say don't buy the property. I'm just like, I said, it just does not feel like this is the right time and this is the right property for you. And I said, and that's not even just in your chart. That's just my instinct, right? And then all this stuff happened and she was really glad she didn't. She did eventually move away from the area, but didn't buy land. But when she found me on Facebook and she said, I just want to send you this picture and you're going to laugh. She now owns this piece of property. And she said, well, I see you live, but I don't see you, on your own. She owns this land. And on this land, she has a whole bunch of little tiny houses that it's a women's community.
Oh, cool.
She bought this property, and this is what she ended up creating. And these were like these two things. This is before tiny homes were a thing,
right,
when she originally did the reading. So she said, this dream has manifested for me in the most remarkable, unusual way. And she said, I kept your reading on cassette tape.
Oh, wow.
Back then, it was recorded on cassette tape.
Yep.
She said, I kept your reading, and she said, I went back and I listened to it. And she says, yes, I still have a cassette player. And she said that so many of the things I just went, wow. And that's because I was just getting such a headache from like trying to deconstruct all of the astrology going forward. And it's like, why am I doing this again?
Cool.
So it's that desire. I have this really deep, heartfelt desire, that compassionate catalyst for change, to present the information to people in a way that it is useful for them.
Yep. I agree
And
with that. 100%.
it's not useful information if it puts you in a state of fear.
100%. Wow. That's really good. Angie, can you relate? Right?
Yes. I'm yes.
We talk about that all the time. The whole idea of fear consciousness versus, kind of being in your zone or surrender.
Well, and the sad truth that an awful lot of people out there who are seeking information is the word embrace. It's almost as though they want fear.
Right. Or they're kind of seeping in it.
Yes. So they, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear good. They don't want to hear, it's the same as those people that believe in demons, which is ridiculous. But
because if it's out there and it's happening to you, you can try to convince yourself that you can bypass responsibility. I am not.
They like fear. They want to be afraid. They fear the unknown. And so when they channel, whatever they do, they bring it through a fearful filter, and that's how it gets translated out into the world.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. And a lot of my astrology that I write about is about perspective. Which perspective
is key, right?
Yeah, it's everything.
It is key. If you can't have that perspective, if everything you see is through the lens of fear, you're always going to be constantly afraid. Period. Right? Like,
yep.
So, big things are happening, big changes are coming, but it's very much like the tower. Why are people afraid of the tower? It's a heads up, people. Why when you're in an exchange for a numerology class, does somebody apologize to you and say, oh my gosh, I see all fives? Cool.
Right. Bring it on.
Bring it, the change. And just as an example, when we were talking before we came on about me and lather, rinse, and repeat, and Lisa, the astrologer, laughed because she knows that is just not my gig. I want the fives. Give me the fives. It needs to be different. I can't do the same thing over and over again. So, wow. There's so much to talk about, right? And it's so many places to go.
We're just getting started here. This is so cool.
So, and I wanted to make just one statement, because Lisa, the other astrologer we usually have as a guest, is my astrologer. And so when I work with her, my idea is I want to know what's going on in my chart because I want to leverage that energy. So that's the idea, is to leverage that energy and plan what I'm going to do or how I'm going to set my intentions based on the energies that are present to give them a little boost. Because the truth of the matter is I have free will and I do what I want when I want.
Sure.
Period.
If I look
Now,
at
some
somebody's
people
chart,
try to derail me, but I don't allow that. So
no. When you get on the Angie train,
you
that
might,
train is
yeah, you
going that
just
way.
hold on.
You just get all on to
Buckle
the
your
right.
seatbelt.
Punch your
Full speed
ticket,
ahead.
go. I'm on board. I'm always on board.
You're in for a
You know,
bumpy ride.
to relate that, if I have a client and they're like, but I want to change my career, or I'm going to move, and I'm like, okay, and their chart is like relationship issues, okay, I'm going to say to them, you can make the changes, you can do these things, but the way that the energy is speaking to you through your chart, it's telling you you need to take a look at it, or it will be more helpful. I try not to use the word need. The most productive thing you can do to move forward with the least amount of resistance is to go deep and figure this piece of it out. Because I know they can move and leave this relationship behind, and they're going to move and change jobs and manifest the same relationship
thing.
issues
Right,
with
exactly.
different people, because this is something that needing to work through.
Yep.
Right.
And I mean, I find it in my own cycles as well, so I try to give people that insight of like, I understand where the desire for the child, people say, I want to do this, and I'll be like, why? What's the why? Angie, we get the what's your why, and
Right.
deep down inside, the why, the base of all the why that manifests most effectively is when you understand the feeling. I want to do this because I want to
Right.
feel this way. And it's like, is it possible for you to feel this way if you move and have another job, but you have the same relationship things showing up around you, right?
That's really insightful. That's very good.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
It's kind of like trying to create you want to change the color of your nail polish, but you paint your nails the same color or a different shade of red or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like you want to change, but
somehow it didn't quite work.
What is it that they the definition of insanity, doing what you always did
And
Doing the
expecting
same
a
thing
different result
over and
Yeah.
over and expecting a different result. Yeah.
and
exactly.
it and it's interesting because relationships with other people, but there are relationships with your work and your life and your health and yourself and your all of it. And I mean, there is one relationship you cannot escape, and that is the one that's with yourself.
Mhm.
So if you don't have that one sorted out, then it doesn't matter what, you can't run far enough.
Right. And to me, prescriptive astrology is using the energy that's represented by the language of astrology to bring through somebody's soul messages to them. This is what your soul is trying to say to you, trying to present you, trying to offer you.
Mhm.
So it's like, what are the opportunities? It's on my website, which incidentally was designed by your next guest, Melanie. She's amazing. What is your soul trying to say to you? How can you live more in alignment with your soul? Because when you are more aligned with your soul, it doesn't mean you never have challenges. It doesn't mean you don't sometimes get blindsided by something, or have a reaction that comes from a very, very, early energy point that, caused some kind of trauma.
Mhm.
It just means that you have more of awareness, you're able to come back to center more, you're able to reset, and maybe mitigate that choice so that it doesn't domino effect forward. To say,
So
oops, I'm so sorry, I spoke, I misspoke, I'm sorry I said it that way, type of thing.
Right.
so thank you, as we come really over the end of the show, for validating, right, the ZXUH method, which is what you just did and what you
Yep.
just said.
Yep.
Visualize,
Lines right up.
align, surrender. See what you want, take aligned action, and then step back and let the universe do the job. Right? So thank you for that.
Yeah. Nice.
You're
Very nice.
welcome.
Oh, wow. So it was, I mean, time really does fly. And
Amazing.
you know, we tried longer episodes, but people never make it to the end of those really long episodes. So
No, I agree.
we appreciate you coming on, and we hope maybe you'll come back again. That would be awesome.
I
Maybe you
got
can tell
8
us,
more questions.
well, right, or maybe we can, instead of astrology, we can talk about intuitive artwork and some of the other really cool things that you do. And, you know, the Daruma and, you know, like some of the other really cool things that you do. Because you do a lot of really cool things.
One of the things that happens when I do like what I call soul alchemy session, which is like not just like we're going to look at these 3 months and, you know, a short-term type of reading, but more of a life path reading, is that out of that, what comes, what I call personalized energy discs that I make, where I'm sitting down with the energy that has come as a result of the readings, maybe connecting with guides and angels and creating this piece of customized energy. It's on a little wooden disc, so it's very portable and usable. People can use it to charge cards, whatever. But it's personalized to them. And then after it's created, and it's kind of cool because the colors just come. Sometimes things appear.
Okay, so that's for the next show, Deb.
So that would be a cool thing to get into.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, it would be a really, really cool thing to get into. So let's do that. Come back again when we have more time to talk, because we actually have tarot time next.
Coming up
so
next.
we still have another thing we have to get done, and you know,
I'll let you get to the cards.
Listeners know it's also tax season, so you know what I have to do after that. So
yes, I think of you.
well,
thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Deb. This has been
so
amazing.
much for coming. I put your links in the description of the video. So anybody that wants to check out what Deb does, just click those links, go over, check out the Facebook page if you're a Facebook peep. If you're not a Facebook peep, then check out her website. Right.
Yep.
Anyway, thank you again so much. Thank you so much for blessing us with your time.
It was wonderful. John, it was wonderful to meet you, and it was good to see you again, too.
Lots of questions for you.
Yep.
All right.
Light, love, and angel hugs.
All right, everybody. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button.